Hello there, and welcome back to Before Law, where we dig into the mysteries that time forgot and uncover the stories that challenge everything we thought we knew about our past. I'm the history guy, and tonight we're embarking on a journey that might just reshape how you see human civilization itself. Picture this. Nestled in the misty highlands of West Java, Indonesia, sits what appears to be an ordinary hill covered in ancient stone terraces. Local villagers have known it for generations as Gunung Padang, the mountain of enlightenment. But what if I told you that beneath those weathered stones lies something that could rewrite the entire timeline of human achievement? What if this unassuming hill is actually the world's oldest pyramid, built not 4,500 years ago like the Great Pyramid of Giza, but a staggering 28,000 years ago? We're talking about a structure that would predate Stonehenge by over 20,000 years. A monument that would have been ancient when the last ice age was still gripping the earth. If the most controversial claims about this site are true, then we're looking at evidence that our ancestors possessed sophisticated engineering knowledge during an era when mainstream archaeology tells us humans were still living in caves and chipping stone tools. But here's where things get really interesting. This isn't just another fringe theory floating around the internet. We're dealing with peer-reviewed research, advanced geological surveys, and findings that have sparked one of the most heated debates in modern archaeology. A debate so intense that it's led to retracted papers, halted excavations, and accusations of academic suppression. Tonight, we're going to explore every angle of this mind-bending mystery. We'll dive deep into the scientific evidence, examine the artifacts that don't quite fit our understanding of the past, and ask the uncomfortable questions that mainstream academia seems reluctant to address. Because if Gunung Padang really is what some researchers claim it to be, then everything we've been taught about the development of human civilization might need a complete overhaul. Let's start with what we can actually see on the surface, because even the visible portions of Gunung Padang are remarkable enough to warrant serious attention. The site spans roughly 150,000 square meters, making it larger than many modern stadiums. It's arranged in 5 distinct terraces that climb toward the summit, each one carefully constructed from massive volcanic stones called andesite and basalt. These aren't small rocks we're talking about. Some of these column stones weigh hundreds of kilograms and stand as tall as a person. They're arranged in patterns that suggest deliberate planning, not random natural formation. What immediately strikes visitors is the sheer scale of organization required to create such a structure. The lowest terrace alone contains hundreds of these massive stones, positioned in what appear to be ritual enclosures or astronomical alignments. As you move up the hill, the terraces become progressively smaller, creating a stepped pyramid silhouette that's eerily reminiscent of similar structures found across the globe, from Mexico to Peru to Cambodia. Connecting these levels is a monumental staircase comprising 370 steps, carved directly into the bedrock. This isn't just a hiking trail, it's wide enough for groups to ascend in formation, flanked by retaining walls that have somehow withstood millennia of tropical rains, earthquakes, and the relentless growth of jungle vegetation. But here's what makes this site truly extraordinary. Those stones aren't just sitting there looking impressive. They're doing something that stones aren't supposed to do. They're humming. When researchers conducted acoustic tests on the site, they discovered that many of the stones emit high-frequency vibrations when struck or subjected to certain conditions. Even more fascinating, these frequencies align almost perfectly with the 440 Hz standard used in modern Western music tuning. That's the frequency of the A note above middle C, the reference pitch that orchestras use to tune their instruments. Think about that for a moment. How does a supposedly primitive stone structure from the Ice Age produce tones that match our modern understanding of harmonics? It's as if the builders had an intimate knowledge of sound engineering that we're only beginning to rediscover today. The acoustic properties don't stop there. Ground-penetrating radar and seismic surveys have revealed that these vibrations are amplified in underground chambers buried deep beneath the visible terraces. The stones seem to be part of a larger resonance system that extends far below the surface, creating standing wave patterns that could theoretically induce altered states of consciousness or serve some other purpose we haven't yet figured out. This brings us to perhaps the most controversial aspect of Gunung Padang: what lies beneath the surface. Because as impressive as the visible terraces are, they might just be the tip of a much larger iceberg. Starting in 2011, a team led by Dr. Danny Hillman Natawijaja from Indonesia's National Research and Innovation Agency began using cutting-edge technology to peer through the Earth without disturbing it. Their toolkit included ground-penetrating radar, electrical resistivity tomography, and seismic imaging. These are the same technologies used to examine the internal structure of Egyptian pyramids or search for hidden chambers in archaeological sites around the world. What they found was nothing short of revolutionary. The geophysical surveys revealed that Gunung Padang isn't just a surface structure, it's a layered complex that extends deep into the hill, with distinct construction phases that span thousands upon thousands of years. The uppermost layer, what they designated as Unit 1, consists of those visible stone terraces we can see today. Based on surface analysis and artifact associations, these appear to date to somewhere between 500 and 1,500 years ago. Impressive, but not earth-shattering. Unit 2, located 3 to 5 meters below the surface, tells a different story. Here, the team found more compacted layers of stone and soil, showing clear signs of intentional arrangement and construction. Carbon dating of organic materials embedded in this layer pushed the timeline back to between 7,500 and 8,300 years ago. That's already entering territory that challenges conventional wisdom about when such sophisticated construction was possible in Southeast Asia. But Unit 3 is where things get really wild. Buried 15 meters down, the surveys revealed a dense matrix of fractured basalt and ancient sediments. When organic materials from this layer were subjected to radiocarbon dating, they yielded results that sent shockwaves through the archaeological community, 25,000 to 28,000 years before present. To put that in perspective, this would place the deepest layers of Gunung Padang firmly in the Upper Paleolithic period, a time when, according to conventional archaeology, humans were just beginning to create cave paintings and develop sophisticated stone tools. The idea that they were also building massive, multi-layered pyramid complexes challenges some of our most fundamental assumptions about human development. The geophysical data reveals even more intriguing details. The scans show rectangular voids within Unit 3, possible chambers or tunnels that extend laterally into the hillside. These aren't random cavities or natural fissures. Their walls appear to have been modified by human hands, suggesting a level of underground architecture that's unprecedented for such an early period. One such chamber, detected at a depth of 12 meters, measures roughly 10 by 15 meters. Its outline is too regular and geometric to be explained by natural geological processes. What might such a space contain? Sealed artifacts from a forgotten civilization? The remains of the builders themselves? Or perhaps, as some researchers speculate, repositories of knowledge encoded in stone or metal that could revolutionize our understanding of ancient technology. The implications of these findings extend far beyond just pushing back dates on a timeline. If the deepest layers of Gunung Padang really are 28,000 years old, it would mean that during the last ice age, when much of the northern hemisphere was locked under glacial ice, there was a sophisticated society in what is now Indonesia capable of quarrying, transporting, and precisely arranging massive stone blocks into complex architectural forms. This wasn't just a matter of brute force either. The site shows evidence of advanced planning and engineering. The builders had to understand load-bearing principles, drainage systems, and long-term structural stability. They were working with materials that required specific knowledge of geology and stoneworking techniques, and they were doing all of this on a scale that suggests not just individual genius, but organized society with the resources and coordination necessary for massive public works projects. The technology they use to bind these stones together is equally impressive. Analysis of core samples from the deeper layers has revealed a cement-like substance that holds the structure together. This isn't simple mud or clay. It's a sophisticated geochemical mixture of clay, silica, and iron oxides that forms a hydraulic cement capable of hardening underwater or in humid tropical conditions. When researchers attempted to recreate this ancient cement in laboratory conditions, they discovered that it required controlled firing at temperatures exceeding 800 degrees Celsius. The iron content, derived from local hematite deposits, appears to have been intentionally added to increase structural strength, much like rebar reinforcement in modern concrete construction. But here's the really fascinating part. This ancient cement doesn't just bind the stones together. It appears to have electrical properties. Laboratory tests show that it can conduct subtle electrical charges, which ties directly into the site's unusual magnetic anomalies. Could this cement have been designed to work as part of some kind of energy system? A way of harnessing and directing the Earth's natural electromagnetic fields? These aren't wild speculations. They're questions raised by measurable, repeatable scientific observations. The magnetic readings at Gunung Padang show clear anomalies that suggest the presence of metallic objects or aligned crystalline structures buried within the construction layers. Some researchers theorize that the entire complex might have functioned as a massive resonance chamber, using sound vibrations and electromagnetic properties for purposes we can only guess at. The construction techniques alone suggest a level of sophistication that seems almost impossible for the proposed time period. Moving stones, weighing hundreds of kilograms up a steep incline without wheels, draft animals, or metal tools requires ingenious solutions. The builders would have needed sophisticated understanding of leverage, ramps, and possibly even more exotic techniques. This brings us to one of the most intriguing aspects of the Gunung Padang mystery: its potential connections to other anomalous sites around the world. Because if this Indonesian hill really does represent evidence of advanced Ice Age engineering, it doesn't stand alone. Similar questions are being raised about underwater structures off the coast of Japan, massive stone complexes in Turkey, and various other sites that seem to push back the boundaries of when humans developed sophisticated building techniques. The site's location is also significant. During the last ice age, sea levels were roughly 120 meters lower than they are today. This means that what is now the Indonesian archipelago was connected by land bridges to mainland Southeast Asia, forming a vast continent that geologists call Sundaland. Gunung Padang sits in what would have been the highlands of this ancient landmass, a perfect location for a monument or city that could have served as a beacon or refuge during times of rising waters. As we continue our exploration of this remarkable site, we'll examine the artifacts that have been discovered, the fierce academic debates they've sparked, and the larger questions they raise about human civilization and the forces that shape our understanding of the past. Because Gunung Padang isn't just about one hill in Indonesia, it's about how we construct our knowledge of history, who gets to decide what's true, and what happens when new evidence challenges the foundations of everything we thought we knew. The story of Gunung Padang is still being written, and as we'll see, the plot twists are far from over. But before we dive deeper into the physical evidence, we need to understand the human story behind these discoveries. Because the tale of how Gunung Padang came to global attention is almost as fascinating as the site itself, filled with chance encounters, persistent researchers, and the kind of serendipitous moments that often mark the most important archaeological breakthroughs. The modern story begins not with trained archaeologists armed with advanced equipment, but with 3 local farmers going about their daily work in 1979. Endi, S, and Aberdeen were tending their fields on the slopes of what they knew simply as the Sacred Mountain when they stumbled across something that would change their lives forever. Exposed stone walls and peculiar alignments were emerging from layers of soil and vegetation that had concealed them for generations. What struck these farmers immediately wasn't just the size of the stones, but their obvious human arrangement. These weren't random volcanic outcrops or naturally occurring rock formations. They formed clear patterns, deliberate structures, geometric alignments that spoke of human intention and careful planning. The symmetry was too perfect, the organization too systematic to be anything other than the work of skilled builders. Word of their discovery spread through the local community, eventually reaching government authorities in Jakarta. Indonesia, having gained independence in 1949, was in the midst of an ambitious cultural renaissance, eager to reclaim and celebrate its ancient heritage after centuries of colonial rule that had often downplayed or ignored indigenous achievements. The timing couldn't have been better for a discovery that promised to showcase the sophisticated accomplishments of Indonesia's ancestors. The government's Bureau of Archaeology dispatched teams to survey the site, confirming not just the farmers' observations, but expanding them dramatically. What they found was a complex spanning thousands of square meters, containing over 400 individual andesite columns arranged across 5 distinct terraces. Some of these stones weighed several hundred kilograms each, yet they had been positioned with remarkable precision across the hillside. The initial archaeological surveys in the early 1980s dated the visible structures to a respectable, but not revolutionary time frame of roughly 2,500 to 1,500 years before the Common Era. This placed Gunung Padang within the established timeline of Southeast Asian megalithic culture. Impressive, but not paradigm-shifting. The site was catalogued, studied briefly, and then largely forgotten by the international archaeological community. For nearly 3 decades, Gunung Padang remained a local curiosity, known primarily to Indonesian researchers and the surrounding communities, who had always regarded it as sacred ground. The Sundanese people of the region continued their traditional practices at the site, leaving offerings of flowers and incense at the stones, perpetuating rituals that blended Hindu-Buddhist influences with much older animist beliefs. But sometimes, the most important discoveries require a fresh perspective, someone willing to look at familiar evidence through different eyes. That person turned out to be Dr. Danny Hillman Natawijaja, a geologist whose primary expertise lay in studying earthquakes and tectonic movements, not archaeology. In the early 2000s, Dr. Hillman was working for Indonesia's National Research and Innovation Agency, focusing on the very real and immediate threats posed by seismic activity in one of the world's most earthquake-prone regions. But something about the Gunung Padang site nagged at his scientific curiosity. The local legends spoke of structures that seemed far more sophisticated than what the archaeological record suggested. The geometric precision of the stone arrangements hinted at engineering knowledge that didn't quite fit the accepted timeline. What if, he wondered, modern geological techniques could reveal aspects of the site that traditional archaeological methods had missed? What if the tools used to study earthquake fault lines and underground rock formations could peer beneath Gunung Padang's surface and uncover hidden layers of construction? Dr. Hillman's approach was methodical and scientific. Rather than relying on speculation or reinterpreting existing evidence, he assembled a multidisciplinary team that combined geological expertise with archaeological knowledge. Their goal was simple: use non-invasive technology to create a 3-dimensional map of everything hidden beneath the visible terraces. The technology they employed reads like a catalogue of cutting-edge scientific instruments. Ground-penetrating radar sent electromagnetic pulses deep into the earth, mapping reflections from underground interfaces and revealing density variations that might indicate artificial structures. Electrical resistivity tomography measured how easily electrical currents could flow through different layers of soil and rock, highlighting voids, chambers, or man-made fills through their contrasting conductivity. Seismic tomography used controlled vibrations to chart wave speeds through underground materials, creating sonic blueprints of hidden structures. When the first results came back from these surveys, they revealed something extraordinary. The visible stone terraces weren't just surface decorations built on natural hillsides. They were the uppermost layer of a much more complex structure that extended deep into the earth in carefully organized strata. The geophysical data showed clear evidence of multiple construction phases, each representing a different period of building and modification. But more importantly, it revealed geometric anomalies deep underground, rectangular shapes and regular patterns that couldn't be explained by natural geological processes. At depths of 12 to 15 meters, the scans detected what appeared to be chambers or rooms, their walls showing signs of human modification through deliberate fracturing and positioning of stone blocks. These weren't random caves or volcanic fissures. They were spaces that had been carved, shaped, and integrated into a larger underground architecture. The implications were staggering. If these underground chambers were contemporary with the deepest construction layers, it would mean that the builders of Gunung Padang weren't just stacking stones on the surface. They were creating a complex three-dimensional structure that extended both upward into the visible terraces and downward into carefully planned subterranean spaces. But the most shocking discoveries came when organic materials from these deep layers were subjected to radiocarbon dating. Charred plant matter and other organic debris found embedded in the construction layers consistently returned dates that pushed the site's antiquity far beyond anything previously imagined. The deepest samples, extracted from what the team designated as Unit 3, yielded radiocarbon dates clustering around 25,000 to 28,000 years before the present. These weren't isolated anomalies or contaminated samples. Multiple independent tests from different laboratories confirmed the same general timeframe, painting a picture of construction activity during the height of the last ice age. To understand how revolutionary these dates are, we need to consider what mainstream archaeology tells us was happening in the world 28,000 years ago. This was during the Upper Paleolithic period, when modern humans had spread across much of the world but were still primarily hunter-gatherers living in small, mobile groups. In Europe, people were creating the earliest known cave paintings and developing sophisticated stone tool technologies. In other parts of the world, humans were just beginning to experiment with more complex social organizations and symbolic behaviors. The idea that they were simultaneously building massive, multi-layered architectural complexes was simply not part of the accepted narrative. Yet here was Gunung Padang, with its geometric precision, its sophisticated drainage systems, its carefully planned terraces and underground chambers, apparently dating to this exact period. Either the radiocarbon dates were catastrophically wrong, or our understanding of human capabilities during the Ice Age needed a complete overhaul. The team's findings were published in 2023 in the journal Archaeological Prospection, a peer-reviewed publication that specializes in the application of scientific techniques to archaeological research. The paper detailed their methodology, presented their geophysical evidence, and argued that Gunung Padang represented a pyramid-like structure, built through multiple phases of construction spanning thousands of years. The response from the international archaeological community was swift and decisive. Critics immediately questioned the association between the radiocarbon dates and human activity, arguing that organic material in soil layers could migrate through natural processes and didn't necessarily indicate contemporary construction. The debate escalated quickly from academic disagreement to something approaching intellectual warfare. Prominent archaeologists dismissed the claims as really weak evidence, while supporters accused the critics of protecting entrenched paradigms and refusing to consider evidence that challenged established timelines. The controversy reached a crescendo in March 2024, when Archaeological Prospection took the unusual step of retracting the paper, citing what they termed a major error in associating radiocarbon dates with human artifacts. The retraction notice argued that there was no direct link between the dated organic material and evidence of human construction. Dr. Hillman and his colleagues responded with vigorous objections, insisting that the retraction was premature and ignored the comprehensive geophysical evidence that showed artificial symmetries and structures incompatible with natural geological processes. They characterized the retraction as academic censorship, designed to protect conventional narratives that couldn't accommodate the possibility of advanced Ice Age civilizations. But the retraction, rather than ending the controversy, seemed to amplify it. Online forums exploded with discussions about academic suppression and hidden agendas. Social media platforms buzzed with speculation about why a peer-reviewed study would be withdrawn after publication, especially one that presented such carefully documented scientific evidence. The timing of the retraction also raised eyebrows. It came just as Gunung Padang was gaining international attention through Netflix's Ancient Apocalypse series, which featured the site as potential evidence for advanced prehistoric civilizations. Critics suggested that the retraction was motivated by a desire to distance mainstream archaeology from what they saw as pseudoscientific speculation. Meanwhile, supporters pointed to the fact that the retraction focused primarily on the interpretation of radiocarbon dates, while largely ignoring the geophysical evidence that had originally convinced peer reviewers to publish the paper. The underground chambers, the geometric anomalies, the evidence of artificial construction, all of this remained unexplained by natural processes. The academic battle over Gunung Padang reflects larger tensions within archaeology about how to handle discoveries that don't fit established frameworks. On one side are researchers committed to maintaining rigorous standards and skeptical of claims that seem to overturn decades of careful scholarship. On the other are those who argue that science advances by challenging accepted wisdom, and that evidence should be evaluated on its merits rather than its conformity to existing theories. What makes this debate particularly intense is that it's not just about dates or construction techniques. It's about fundamental questions regarding human nature and capability. If Gunung Padang really was built 28,000 years ago, it suggests that our Ice Age ancestors were far more sophisticated than we've given them credit for. It implies forms of social organization, technical knowledge, and cultural achievement that challenge our basic assumptions about human development. The story is far from over. Despite the retraction and the heated academic debates, research at Gunung Padang continues. The Indonesian government has renewed its commitment to investigating the site, with plans for new excavations and surveys using even more advanced techniques. As we'll explore next, the physical artifacts that have been discovered at Gunung Padang tell their own compelling story, one that adds tangible evidence to the geophysical surveys and radiocarbon dates. These objects, from sophisticated metal alloys to precision-crafted tools, raise their own set of questions about what our ancestors were capable of achieving in the distant past. The artifacts recovered from Gunung Padang tell a story that's almost as intriguing as the structure itself. These aren't the crude stone tools and simple pottery fragments you might expect from a site supposedly built by hunter-gatherers. Instead, they paint a picture of technological sophistication that seems to leap centuries ahead of what conventional archaeology tells us was possible. Let's start with perhaps the most controversial discovery: coins that appear to predate the invention of currency by thousands of years. During excavations in the upper terraces, researchers uncovered small metallic discs with faint engravings that initially seemed unremarkable. But when these objects were subjected to detailed analysis, they revealed something extraordinary. The coins showed clear evidence of deliberate manufacturing, with consistent weight and size that suggested standardized production. Their composition analysis revealed a mixture of copper and trace alloys that indicated sophisticated metallurgical knowledge, including controlled smelting techniques. But here's where things get really interesting. Radiocarbon dating of associated organic materials placed these coins at approximately 5,200 years old. To put that in perspective, the earliest known coins in human history were minted in Lydia, in what is now Turkey, around 600 years before the Common Era. These Indonesian coins would predate that milestone by over 4,600 years. If authentic, they represent evidence of economic systems and metalworking capabilities that shouldn't have existed in Southeast Asia until much later periods. The symbols engraved on these coins add another layer of mystery. Rather than simple decorative patterns, they appear to be abstract motifs that bear striking resemblances to astronomical alignments or early forms of script. Some researchers have noted similarities to symbols found on Indus Valley seals, suggesting possible trade connections or shared cultural influences across vast distances during prehistoric times. But the coin discovery is just the beginning. Excavations have also yielded an impressive array of jewelry and personal ornaments that speak to both artistic sophistication and long-distance trade networks. Beaded necklaces crafted from polished quartz and obsidian show evidence of advanced lapidary techniques, with faceted surfaces that catch and reflect light in ways that suggest deliberate optical effects. The obsidian used in these ornaments presents its own puzzle. Trace element analysis indicates that this volcanic glass originated from distant island sources, implying seafaring trade routes during periods when sea levels were much lower than today. During the Ice Age, when the deepest layers of Gunung Padang were supposedly being constructed, these trade routes would have connected Indonesia to what is now mainland Southeast Asia across the exposed Sunderland continent. The pottery fragments discovered at the site are equally impressive. Rather than simple hand-formed vessels, many show evidence of wheel-thrown construction, with sophisticated glazing techniques that shouldn't appear in the archaeological record for centuries. The glazes themselves required precise temperature control and knowledge of ceramic chemistry that suggests formal apprenticeship systems and specialized craft knowledge. Some pottery shards bear etched patterns that mirror motifs found at other controversial sites around the world. Geometric spirals, animal figures, and abstract designs that appear to encode information beyond mere decoration. These patterns have sparked comparisons to similar artwork found at sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, raising questions about whether ideas and techniques were spreading across much larger areas than previously thought possible. The tools and weapons recovered from Gunung Padang are perhaps most intriguing of all. Stone axes with incredibly sharp, polished edges rival the finest Neolithic craftsmanship, but they've been found in contexts that suggest much greater antiquity. The hafts show remnants of binding resins and organic materials that speak to sophisticated understanding of tool assembly and maintenance. More controversial are the metallic traces found embedded in some stone implements. Spectrographic analysis has detected iron particles within basalt tools, suggesting early experimentation with metalworking techniques that predate the accepted timeline for iron usage in the region by thousands of years. These aren't random contaminations or later additions. The iron appears to be deliberately incorporated into the stone matrix during manufacturing. Some weapons, including spear points and blade fragments, show wear patterns that indicate both practical use and ceremonial function. The symmetry and craftsmanship suggest they weren't just utilitarian objects, but items of significance, possibly used in rituals or as symbols of status within a complex social hierarchy. But perhaps the most remarkable material discovery at Gunung Padang is the ancient cement compound that binds the massive stone blocks together. This isn't simple mud mortar or crude binding material. Chemical analysis reveals a sophisticated geopolymer that represents a level of materials science that seems impossible for the proposed time period. The cement consists of a carefully controlled mixture of clay, silica, and iron oxides that forms a hydraulic binding agent capable of hardening underwater or in humid tropical conditions. When researchers attempted to replicate this compound in modern laboratories, they discovered that its production required controlled firing at temperatures exceeding 800 degrees Celsius, along with precise timing and mixing procedures. The iron content appears to be intentionally added for structural reinforcement, much like rebar in modern concrete construction. But laboratory tests have revealed something even more intriguing. This ancient cement possesses subtle electrical conducting properties. When subjected to mechanical stress, it generates small electrical charges through piezoelectric effects, similar to modern quartz-based electronics. This electrical activity ties directly into the magnetic anomalies detected throughout the Gunung Padang site. Magnetometer surveys have identified patterns of magnetic variation that suggest the presence of metallic objects or aligned crystalline structures embedded within the construction layers. The cement's conductive properties might have been designed to work as part of a larger electromagnetic system. The implications are staggering. If the builders of Gunung Padang understood piezoelectric effects and electromagnetic phenomena, they possessed knowledge that wouldn't be formally rediscovered by Western science until the 19th century. They might have been creating structures that functioned as primitive electrical systems, possibly for purposes we can only speculate about. Some researchers theorize that the entire complex might have operated as a massive resonance chamber, using the cement's conductive properties in conjunction with the site's acoustic anomalies to create effects we're still trying to understand. The possibility that ancient builders were manipulating electromagnetic fields opens up entirely new categories of speculation about lost technologies and forgotten sciences. The preservation of these materials is itself remarkable. The alkaline soils of Gunung Padang have created conditions that allow organic materials to survive far longer than would normally be expected in tropical environments. This has provided researchers with an unusually complete picture of the technologies and techniques used by the site's builders. Analysis of preserved plant fibers reveals sophisticated rope-making techniques using materials that had to be imported from considerable distances. Some fibers show evidence of treatment with natural preservatives and strengthening agents that require detailed knowledge of plant chemistry. The ropes themselves display complex braiding patterns that maximize strength while minimizing material usage. Even more intriguing are traces of what appear to be synthetic compounds, materials that don't occur naturally, but seem to have been created through deliberate chemical processes. These substances are found in microscopic quantities within the cement matrix and some tool assemblages, suggesting experimental chemistry that pushes the boundaries of what we thought possible for prehistoric peoples. Spectroscopic analysis has identified trace elements and molecular structures that resemble modern ceramics and advanced alloys. While the quantities are too small for definitive analysis, their presence raises profound questions about the extent of ancient technological knowledge. The pattern that emerges from all these material discoveries is one of systematic innovation and experimentation. Rather than the simple hunter-gatherer societies described in textbooks, the builders of Gunung Padang appear to have been part of a complex civilization with specialized knowledge systems, trade networks, and technological capabilities that rival many later periods. What makes these discoveries even more significant is their context within the site's layered construction. The most sophisticated artifacts and materials aren't found in the uppermost, most recent layers. Instead, they're concentrated in the deeper, older strata, suggesting that technological capabilities might have declined over time rather than progressed linearly. This pattern contradicts one of archaeology's most fundamental assumptions, that human societies invariably develop from simple to complex over time. If Gunung Padang's chronology is correct, it suggests periods of technological advancement followed by decline and loss, a cyclical pattern of rise and fall that challenges linear models of human progress. The artifacts also raise uncomfortable questions about cultural diffusion and contact between ancient peoples. The similarities between objects found at Gunung Padang and those discovered at sites thousands of miles away suggest either remarkable, convergent development or contact networks that spanned continents during periods when such connections were supposedly impossible. As we examine these physical remains, we're forced to confront the possibility that our ancestors were far more capable, far more connected, and far more innovative than we've given them credit for. The objects they left behind at Gunung Padang speak to forms of knowledge and skill that don't fit comfortably within established historical frameworks. But material artifacts are just one part of the story. The real controversy surrounding Gunung Padang erupted when researchers began publishing their findings and challenging established archaeological orthodoxy. What followed was an academic battle that revealed as much about the politics of knowledge as it did about ancient civilizations. The response from mainstream archaeology was swift, decisive, and in many ways, more revealing than the original discoveries themselves. Because sometimes, the reaction to new evidence tells us as much about the current state of a field as the evidence itself does about the past. The academic firestorm that erupted around Gunung Padang reveals something profound about how knowledge is constructed, protected, and sometimes suppressed in our modern world. When Dr. Hillman's research team published their findings in Archaeological Prospection in October 2023, they probably expected debate. What they got instead was something closer to an intellectual war. The retraction came just 5 months later, in March 2024, accompanied by language that was unusually harsh for academic discourse. The journal's editors didn't just question the research methodology or suggest alternative interpretations. They declared the paper contained a major error and essentially accused the researchers of fundamental incompetence in associating their radiocarbon dates with human activity. But here's what makes this retraction particularly suspicious to many observers. It focused almost exclusively on the dating evidence, while largely ignoring the geophysical surveys that had convinced peer reviewers to accept the paper in the first place. The underground chambers, the geometric anomalies, the clear evidence of artificial construction revealed by ground-penetrating radar and seismic imaging, all of this remained unexplained by the retraction. Dr. Hillman and his colleagues didn't take the criticism quietly. In public statements and interviews, they argued that the retraction was premature and ignored crucial supplementary evidence that had been submitted during the revision process. They pointed out that their critics hadn't visited the site, hadn't examined the raw geophysical data, and were making judgments based on second-hand interpretations rather than direct analysis. The timing raised additional red flags. The retraction came just as Gunung Padang was gaining international attention through Graham Hancock's Netflix series Ancient Apocalypse, which featured the site as potential evidence for advanced prehistoric civilizations. Critics suggested that mainstream archaeology was distancing itself from anything that might be associated with alternative historical theories, regardless of the scientific merit. What's particularly telling is the pattern of response from establishment archaeologists. Rather than engaging with the specific evidence, many resorted to character attacks and blanket dismissals. Terms like pseudo-archaeology and fringe theory were thrown around liberally, often by researchers who admitted they hadn't examined the primary data. This kind of gatekeeping isn't unusual in academic fields, but it becomes problematic when it prevents serious consideration of evidence that challenges existing paradigms. The history of science is littered with revolutionary discoveries that were initially rejected by established authorities. Continental drift, bacterial causes of ulcers, the impact origin of the Chicxulub crater, all of these were dismissed by mainstream science before eventually being accepted. The Gunung Padang controversy seems to follow a similar pattern. Establishment archaeologists have invested decades in constructing narratives about human development that place sophisticated civilization firmly within the last few thousand years. Evidence that suggests advanced engineering capabilities during the Ice Age threatens to overturn entire careers' worth of scholarship. There's also a geopolitical dimension that can't be ignored. For centuries, the story of human civilization has been dominated by European and Middle Eastern sites. The idea that some of humanity's earliest and most sophisticated achievements might have occurred in Southeast Asia challenges Western-centric historical narratives that have shaped academic funding, museum collections, and popular understanding. Indonesia's government clearly recognizes the potential significance of Gunung Padang, not just scientifically, but culturally and economically. In February 2025, Culture Minister Fadli Zon publicly urged renewed investigations, framing the site as a national treasure deserving clarity amid ongoing debates. By July, official announcements confirmed plans for staged restoration, beginning with non-invasive surveys before any physical excavation. This governmental support provides resources and legitimacy that independent researchers often lack, but it also adds political complexity to what should be purely scientific questions. When archaeological discoveries become matters of national pride, the pressure to find spectacular results can compromise objective analysis. The Indonesian approach seems more measured than some past archaeological controversies. Rather than rushing to excavate or making grandiose claims, they're planning careful, methodical investigation using the most advanced techniques available. This includes potential international collaborations that could bring additional expertise and credibility to the research. But the academic establishment's resistance continues. Critics demand what they call extraordinary evidence for extraordinary claims, a standard that sounds reasonable but can become a moving target when applied selectively. The same archaeological community that accepts relatively modest evidence for conventional sites suddenly requires overwhelming proof when confronted with anything that challenges established timelines. The social media response has been equally revealing. Hashtags like Ya Gunung Padang Truth have trended periodically, with amateur researchers dissecting retraction notices and spotting inconsistencies in the official response. Online forums buzz with discussions about academic gatekeeping and suppressed evidence, sometimes veering into conspiracy territory, but often raising legitimate questions about scientific integrity. What's emerged is a parallel conversation happening outside traditional academic channels, where researchers and enthusiasts share data, debate interpretations, and pursue lines of inquiry that established institutions seem reluctant to explore. This democratization of archaeological discussion has both benefits and dangers, allowing for fresh perspectives, while sometimes amplifying unfounded speculation. The retraction itself has become a case study in how academic institutions handle controversial research. Rather than encouraging further investigation to resolve uncertainties, the response seems designed to shut down inquiry entirely. This approach may protect established narratives in the short term, but it risks damaging the credibility of archaeology as a scientific discipline. Independent analysis of the retracted paper reveals that many of the criticisms focus on interpretive frameworks rather than fundamental methodological flaws. The radiocarbon dates are accurate, the geophysical surveys were conducted properly, and the site clearly contains artificial structures. The dispute centers on how to interpret this evidence within existing theoretical frameworks. This highlights a crucial distinction between evidence and interpretation. The physical reality of Gunung Padang, its layered construction, its underground chambers, its sophisticated materials. These facts remain regardless of how we choose to interpret them. The academic battle isn't really about what exists at the site. It's about what we're allowed to conclude from what exists. The suppression narrative gains credibility when we consider the broader context of archaeological discovery. Time and again, evidence that challenges established chronologies faces institutional resistance. The underwater ruins off Japan's Yonaguni Island, the sophisticated stonework at Turkey's Göbekli Tepe, the mysterious alignments at sites around the world, all have faced similar skepticism from mainstream archaeology. What makes Gunung Padang different is the quality and quantity of scientific evidence supporting anomalous conclusions. This isn't based on speculation or wishful thinking. It's grounded in rigorous geophysical analysis, careful stratigraphic study, and multiple independent dating techniques. The evidence is strong enough that dismissing it requires increasingly elaborate explanations for why everything appears to be something it's not. The controversy has also revealed interesting fault lines within the archaeological community itself. Younger researchers, particularly those trained in scientific techniques, rather than traditional humanistic approaches, seem more open to considering evidence that challenges established narratives. Meanwhile, senior academics who've built careers on specific interpretations of the past show greater resistance to paradigm-shifting discoveries. This generational divide reflects broader changes in how archaeology is practiced. Modern techniques like ground-penetrating radar, genetic analysis, and advanced dating methods are revealing aspects of the past that weren't accessible to earlier generations of researchers. As these technologies become more sophisticated and widely available, they're likely to generate more discoveries that don't fit comfortably within existing frameworks. The international dimension adds another layer of complexity. While Indonesian researchers push forward with new investigations, many Western archaeologists remain skeptical or dismissive. This creates an awkward situation where different national academic communities reach different conclusions about the same evidence, undermining the supposed universality of scientific method. Perhaps most troubling is the way the controversy has exposed the role of funding and institutional pressure in shaping archaeological narratives. Researchers depend on grants, publications, and professional recognition to advance their careers. Taking positions that challenge established orthodoxy can be professionally dangerous, creating incentives to conform rather than pursue evidence wherever it leads. The retraction of the Gunung Padang paper sends a clear message to other researchers. Challenge established chronologies at your own risk. This chilling effect may prevent legitimate scientific inquiry into sites and discoveries that don't fit conventional narratives, ultimately impoverishing our understanding of the human past. Yet the story continues to evolve. Despite academic pushback, public interest in Gunung Padang remains high, driven partly by social media attention and documentary coverage. This popular enthusiasm creates pressure for continued investigation, even if establishment archaeology remains reluctant. The site's potential connections to other anomalous locations around the world add another dimension to the controversy. If Gunung Padang really does represent evidence of advanced Ice Age engineering, it doesn't exist in isolation. Similar questions are being raised about sites across the globe, suggesting patterns that transcend individual discoveries. As we'll explore next, these global connections paint a picture of possible prehistoric civilizations that challenges not just specific dates or sites, but our entire understanding of how human societies developed and spread across the planet. The implications extend far beyond archaeology into questions about human nature, technological development, and the forces that shape civilizational rise and fall. The academic battle over Gunung Padang is far from over, and its resolution will likely influence how archaeological institutions handle controversial discoveries for decades to come. Whether the site ultimately proves to be evidence of Ice Age engineering or a more conventional structure built through later periods, the controversy has already revealed important truths about how knowledge is constructed, protected, and sometimes suppressed in our modern academic system. But Gunung Padang doesn't stand alone in challenging conventional archaeological timelines. Across the globe, from the depths of the Pacific Ocean to the plains of Turkey, other sites are raising similar questions about when humans developed sophisticated building techniques and complex societies. These connections suggest patterns that extend far beyond any single discovery. The underwater ruins off Japan's Yonaguni Island present perhaps the most dramatic parallel to Gunung Padang's controversial chronology. Discovered accidentally in 1986 by a local diver searching for hammerhead sharks, the Yonaguni monument consists of massive stone terraces, right-angled cuts, and what appear to be deliberately carved features lying 25 meters beneath the Pacific's surface. The structure spans roughly 290 meters in length and rises like a submerged pyramid from the ocean floor. Its surfaces show clear evidence of geometric planning, with flat terraces connected by stone stairways, and what some researchers interpret as ceremonial platforms or gathering spaces. The precision of the angles and the regularity of the surfaces have convinced many observers that this represents human architecture, not natural rock formation. What makes Yonaguni particularly relevant to the Gunung Padang controversy is its potential age. The monument lies at depths that would have been above sea level during the last ice age, when ocean levels were approximately 120 meters lower than today. If the structure was built on dry land and subsequently submerged by rising seas, it could date back 12,000 years or more. This timeline places Yonaguni in the same general period as Gunung Padang's deepest layers, suggesting the possibility of sophisticated construction techniques being employed across Southeast Asia during the late Pleistocene. The geographic proximity, separated by thousands of kilometers of what is now ocean but was once connected by the Sunderland continent, raises intriguing questions about cultural connections and shared technologies. Japanese marine geologist Dr. Masaki Kimura, who has led extensive research at Yonaguni, argues that the monument shows clear evidence of human modification, including tool marks, deliberately cut steps, and architectural features that couldn't result from natural erosion processes. His findings parallel Dr. Hillman's work at Gunung Padang in suggesting that conventional archaeological timelines may need substantial revision. The similarities extend beyond just dating controversies. Both sites show evidence of acoustic properties that seem deliberately engineered. At Yonaguni, underwater recordings have detected unusual sound propagation patterns that some researchers believe could have served navigational or ceremonial purposes. The idea that both structures might have functioned as sonic landmarks or communication devices adds another layer to their potential connection. Moving westward across Asia, we encounter Turkey's Göbekli Tepe, a site that has already forced archaeologists to reconsider their assumptions about prehistoric societies. Dating to approximately 11,000 years ago, Göbekli Tepe consists of massive stone circles topped with T-shaped pillars, some weighing up to 20 tons, and decorated with sophisticated animal carvings. What makes Göbekli Tepe revolutionary is that it predates the development of agriculture and permanent settlements by thousands of years. According to conventional archaeological theory, hunter-gatherer societies shouldn't have possessed the organization or motivation necessary for such massive construction projects. Yet here stands evidence that they did exactly that. The parallels to Gunung Padang are striking. Both sites feature precisely arranged megalithic architecture that required sophisticated planning and engineering. Both show evidence of multiple construction phases spanning thousands of years. Both were deliberately buried or abandoned, suggesting ritual or ceremonial purposes that transcended practical considerations. Perhaps most significantly, both sites challenge the linear progression model that dominates archaeological thinking. Instead of steady development from simple to complex societies, they suggest periods of remarkable achievement, followed by apparent decline or abandonment. This cyclical pattern appears repeatedly in anomalous archaeological sites around the world. The burial aspect is particularly intriguing. At Göbekli Tepe, the circular enclosures were intentionally filled with tons of debris, carefully preserving the structures while hiding them from view. Similar deliberate burial has been detected at Gunung Padang, where geophysical surveys reveal layers of fill material separating different construction phases. This pattern of intentional concealment raises profound questions about the motivations of ancient builders. Were they protecting sacred sites from desecration, preserving knowledge for future discovery, or responding to catastrophic events that made surface occupation impossible? The animal symbolism at Göbekli Tepe also echoes themes found at other controversial sites. The pillars feature detailed carvings of scorpions, snakes, birds, and other creatures arranged in patterns that some researchers interpret as astronomical markers or calendrical systems. Similar symbolic motifs appear in artifacts recovered from Gunung Padang, suggesting shared iconographic traditions across vast distances. These connections become even more intriguing when we consider the theoretical framework proposed by researchers like Graham Hancock, who argues for the existence of an advanced Ice Age civilization that was largely destroyed by global catastrophes around 12,000 years ago. According to this hypothesis, sites like Gunung Padang, Yonaguni, and Göbekli Tepe represent surviving remnants of a much more extensive prehistoric culture. The catastrophe theory gained support from geological evidence of massive environmental changes during the Younger Dryas period, roughly 12,900 to 11,700 years ago. This interval saw rapid climate fluctuations, rising sea levels, and possible impacts from cometary debris that could have devastated coastal civilizations and forced survivors to retreat to highland refuges. If such a catastrophe occurred, it would explain why evidence of advanced prehistoric cultures is so fragmentary and controversial. Most traces would have been destroyed by flooding, buried under sediments, or lost to erosion and geological processes. Only sites in protected locations or deliberately preserved through burial would survive to puzzle modern archaeologists. The Sundaland connection provides a geographic framework for understanding how these sites might relate to each other. During the Ice Age, lower sea levels exposed vast areas of continental shelf, creating land bridges that connected what are now separate islands and regions. This expanded landmass would have supported larger populations and more complex societies than the isolated islands of today. Gunung Padang's location in the highlands of this ancient continent makes it an ideal candidate for a major ceremonial or administrative centre. Its elevated position would have made it visible from great distances, while its inland location would have provided protection from coastal flooding as sea levels began to rise. The acoustic properties shared by these sites add another dimension to their potential connections. If ancient peoples understood sound engineering principles, they might have created a network of resonant structures that could communicate across vast distances or serve coordinated ceremonial functions. The specific frequencies detected at both Gunung Padang and other sites suggest deliberate tuning rather than coincidental acoustic effects. Recent discoveries continue to expand this network of anomalous sites. In Indonesia alone, researchers have identified several other locations with suspicious geometric features and questionable dating. The Padang Lawas complex in North Sumatra shows similar megalithic construction techniques, while sites in Java and Sulawesi reveal architectural sophistication that doesn't fit conventional chronologies. The global distribution of these sites suggests either remarkable convergent evolution of building techniques or actual cultural connections spanning continents during prehistoric times. Either explanation challenges fundamental assumptions about ancient societies and their capabilities. DNA analysis of ancient remains is beginning to reveal migration patterns and population connections that support the idea of extensive prehistoric contact networks. Genetic evidence shows that ancient peoples were far more mobile and interconnected than previously thought, with trade routes and cultural exchanges spanning thousands of kilometers. These biological connections provide a mechanism for the spread of architectural techniques and symbolic systems across the network of anomalous sites. Rather than isolated local developments, they might represent variations on shared cultural themes transmitted through ancient contact networks. The implications extend beyond archaeology into questions about human nature and technological development. If prehistoric peoples were capable of such sophisticated achievements, what factors led to their apparent decline? Were these isolated peaks of development, or do they represent a more general pattern of cyclical rise and fall in human societies? The answers to these questions may lie buried in sites like Gunung Padang, waiting for archaeological techniques advanced enough to reveal their secrets without destroying the evidence in the process. As technology improves and more sites are discovered, we may eventually be able to reconstruct a more complete picture of prehistoric human achievement. But that reconstruction will require overcoming not just technical challenges, but institutional resistance to paradigm-shifting discoveries. The controversy surrounding Gunung Padang demonstrates how difficult it can be to challenge established narratives, even when supported by strong scientific evidence. As we continue exploring the mysteries of this remarkable site, we'll delve into the specific artifacts and technologies that make it so controversial, examining the physical evidence that supports claims of advanced prehistoric engineering, and the implications of those claims for our understanding of human history. The physical evidence emerging from Gunung Padang tells a story that grows more perplexing with each discovery. These aren't just ancient stones arranged in pretty patterns. We're looking at artifacts and materials that suggest technological capabilities that shouldn't have existed during the proposed time periods. Let's talk about what researchers have actually pulled from the ground, because these tangible objects are where rubber meets road in archaeological debates. You can argue about dating methods and interpretation all you want, but when you're holding a precisely crafted tool or examining a complex alloy, you're dealing with undeniable proof of human capability. The metalworking evidence alone is enough to make mainstream archaeologists uncomfortable. Core samples from the deeper construction layers have revealed metal fragments embedded within the ancient cement matrix. These aren't random contaminations or modern intrusions. Spectrographic analysis shows deliberate incorporation of iron and copper alloys into the binding materials, suggesting knowledge of metallurgy that predates accepted timelines by thousands of years. What makes this even more remarkable is the sophistication of the alloy compositions. These aren't crude mixtures of available metals. They show evidence of controlled smelting temperatures, precise timing, and understanding of how different elements interact to create specific properties. The iron content appears to be intentionally calibrated to provide structural reinforcement while maintaining workability of the cement compound. Some of the metal fragments show signs of deliberate shaping and tool marks, indicating they weren't just raw materials, but finished objects that were incorporated into the construction. This suggests a level of technological integration where metallurgy, chemistry, and architecture work together as unified systems rather than separate crafts. The ceramic evidence is equally puzzling. Pottery fragments recovered from various layers show firing techniques that required precise temperature control and atmospheric management. Some pieces display glazing effects that shouldn't appear in Southeast Asian ceramics for centuries after the proposed construction dates. The glazes themselves required understanding of mineral chemistry and kiln design that implies formal knowledge systems and specialized training. But it's the stoneworking that really captures attention. The precision with which massive basalt and andesite blocks were shaped and fitted challenges everything we think we know about prehistoric tool technology. These stones weren't just roughly hewn and stacked. They show evidence of sophisticated cutting techniques, precise angle work, and surface finishing that rivals the best megalithic construction anywhere in the world. Some blocks display what can only be described as machine-like precision. Surfaces are flat to within millimeters across spans of several meters. Angles are cut to exactness that would challenge modern stoneworkers using power tools. The fitting between blocks is so tight that you can't slip a knife blade between them, despite the enormous weight and irregular shapes involved. The drilling evidence is particularly intriguing. Several stones show perfectly circular holes drilled to consistent depths and diameters. The bore walls are smooth and regular, showing none of the irregularities you'd expect from hand tools or primitive techniques. Some holes show evidence of multiple drilling operations, suggesting systematic approaches to stone modification that required planning and measurement. Core samples extracted from these drilled holes reveal microscopic metal particles embedded in the stone matrix, indicating the use of metal-tipped drilling tools. The particle distribution patterns suggest rotary drilling techniques rather than percussion methods, implying mechanical systems that could maintain consistent pressure and speed over extended periods. The transport and placement of these massive stones presents its own technological puzzle. Some blocks weigh several tons and had to be moved up steep inclines to their final positions. The logistics alone would challenge modern construction crews with heavy equipment. Yet somehow, prehistoric builders accomplished this task and positioned the stones with millimeter precision. Analysis of the stone placement patterns reveals sophisticated understanding of load distribution and structural engineering. The weight of upper terraces is carefully balanced across lower foundations, with stress points reinforced through strategic placement of supporting elements. This isn't accidental or intuitive arrangement. It represents systematic engineering knowledge applied on a massive scale. The acoustic engineering becomes more impressive when you understand the precision required to achieve the observed effects. The stones don't just happen to resonate at specific frequencies. They've been deliberately shaped and positioned to create harmonic relationships that amplify and focus sound waves in predictable ways. Different areas of the site produce different acoustic effects, suggesting zoned functionality where various terraces serve distinct purposes within an overall sonic system. Some areas amplify low frequencies, others focus high-pitched tones. The underground chambers act as resonating cavities that can sustain standing waves for extended periods. The mathematical precision underlying these acoustic effects implies understanding of wave mechanics and harmonic theory that wasn't formally developed in Western science until relatively recent centuries. Yet here it is, embedded in stone arrangements that may be tens of thousands of years old. Recent analysis has revealed even more sophisticated aspects of the acoustic system. The resonant frequencies don't just match modern musical scales. They align with specific brainwave patterns associated with altered states of consciousness. The 40 Hz gamma wave frequency, linked to heightened awareness and cognitive processing, appears repeatedly in the site's harmonic signature. This suggests the acoustic properties weren't just decorative or coincidental. They may have been designed to produce specific psychological effects in people experiencing the site, whether for ritual purposes, healing applications, or other functions we don't yet understand. The builders clearly possessed knowledge of how sound affects human consciousness. The preservation of organic materials in the site's alkaline environment has provided unprecedented glimpses into prehistoric technologies. Fiber analysis reveals rope-making techniques using materials that had to be imported from considerable distances. The ropes themselves show complex braiding patterns that maximize strength while minimizing material usage. Some preserved plant materials show evidence of chemical treatment with natural preservatives and strengthening agents. This required detailed knowledge of plant chemistry and processing techniques that implies formal knowledge systems passed down through generations of specialists. Even more intriguing are traces of what appear to be synthetic compounds created through deliberate chemical processes. These materials exist in microscopic quantities within the cement matrix and some tool assemblages, but their molecular structures don't occur naturally. They seem to represent experimental chemistry that pushes boundaries of what we thought possible for prehistoric peoples. The tool assemblages themselves tell stories of specialized craft knowledge and systematic manufacturing approaches. Stone implements show evidence of standardized production methods, with consistent dimensions and finishing techniques that suggest formal apprenticeship systems and quality control measures. Some tools display wear patterns indicating specific uses that required considerable skill and experience to master. These weren't general-purpose implements made by anyone who needed them. They represent specialized equipment used by trained craftspeople for particular applications within larger technological systems. The gradual picture that emerges from all this material evidence is one of systematic innovation and technological integration. Rather than isolated achievements by individual geniuses, we're seeing coordinated development across multiple disciplines, all working together within sophisticated knowledge systems. What makes this evidence particularly challenging for conventional archaeology is its context within the site's controversial chronology. The most sophisticated materials and techniques aren't found in the uppermost, most recent layers where you'd expect technological advancement. Instead, they're concentrated in deeper, older strata, suggesting that capabilities may have declined over time rather than progressed. This inverted technological progression contradicts fundamental assumptions about how human societies develop. Instead of steady improvement from simple to complex, Gunung Padang suggests periods of remarkable achievement followed by decline and loss of knowledge. The implications extend far beyond this single site. If prehistoric peoples possess such sophisticated technological capabilities, what happened to that knowledge? Why don't we see continuous development from these early achievements to later civilizations? What forces could cause such dramatic technological regression? These questions become even more pressing when we consider the global context. Similar technological anomalies appear at controversial sites around the world, all dating to roughly the same prehistoric period. Rather than isolated local developments, they might represent fragments of a much more extensive technological tradition that was largely lost to history. The material evidence from Gunung Padang doesn't just challenge specific dates or construction techniques. It forces us to reconsider fundamental assumptions about human capability, technological development, and the forces that shape civilizational rise and fall. As we continue examining this remarkable site, those larger questions become impossible to ignore. But understanding what this evidence means requires looking beyond individual artifacts to the bigger picture of how ancient civilizations might have developed, flourished, and ultimately vanished, leaving only fragmentary clues for modern researchers to puzzle over. The story Gunung Padang tells isn't just about one hill in Indonesia. It's about patterns of human achievement that may be far older and more sophisticated than we ever imagined. The implications of what we're discovering at Gunung Padang extend into some of the most fundamental questions about human history and the nature of civilization itself. Because if this site really represents what the evidence suggests, we're not just looking at a single anomalous discovery. We're potentially glimpsing the remnants of entire civilizations that flourished and vanished long before recorded history began. Consider what it would mean if advanced societies existed during the Ice Age. We're talking about a period when most of the northern hemisphere was locked under glacial ice, when sea levels were 120 meters lower than today, when the geography of the world was completely different from what we know now. The landmasses that are now separate islands were connected by vast continental shelves, creating opportunities for large-scale civilizations that would be impossible today. The Sundaland continent, which connected what is now Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and parts of Southeast Asia into a single massive landmass, would have been roughly the size of Europe. This enormous area, now mostly underwater, could have supported populations and civilizations on a scale we can barely imagine. Gunung Padang, sitting in the highlands of this ancient continent, would have been positioned perfectly as a major ceremonial or administrative center. Think about the implications of that geography for a moment. During the Ice Age, what we now see as isolated islands scattered across the Pacific were actually highlands, rising from a vast continental plain. Rivers would have flowed across areas that are now deep ocean. Forests and grasslands would have stretched for thousands of kilometers in regions that are now underwater. The potential for large, complex societies would have been enormous. But then, around 12,000 years ago, everything changed. The Ice Age ended not gradually, but in a series of catastrophic pulses that raised sea levels by over 100 meters in relatively short periods. Entire continents disappeared beneath rising waters. Coastal civilizations would have been completely destroyed, their populations scattered or eliminated entirely. This catastrophic scenario provides a framework for understanding why evidence of advanced prehistoric civilizations is so fragmentary and controversial. Most traces would have been submerged, buried under sediments, or destroyed by the massive environmental changes that accompanied deglaciation. Only sites in protected inland locations, deliberately preserved or accidentally sealed, would survive to puzzle modern researchers. The pattern we see at Gunung Padang, with its multiple construction phases and deliberate burial layers, makes perfect sense within this catastrophic framework. Rather than continuous occupation, we might be seeing evidence of periodic reoccupation by survivors trying to preserve and maintain ancient knowledge in the face of environmental collapse. This connects to one of the most intriguing aspects of the site: its apparent function as some kind of technological or ceremonial complex rather than a simple settlement. The acoustic properties, the electromagnetic anomalies, the sophisticated materials all suggest purposes that go beyond basic habitation or defense. This was a place designed for specific functions that we're still trying to understand. Recent research into consciousness and altered states has revealed that certain combinations of sound frequencies, electromagnetic fields, and architectural geometry can produce profound psychological effects. The specific frequencies detected at Gunung Padang align remarkably well with brainwave patterns associated with heightened awareness, creative insight, and what researchers call transcendent experiences. Could ancient builders have understood these principles and deliberately designed structures to induce specific mental states? The evidence increasingly suggests they did exactly that. Sites around the world show similar acoustic and electromagnetic properties, often combined with architectural features that seem designed to enhance psychological experiences. This raises fascinating questions about the relationship between ancient technology and consciousness. Rather than focusing purely on mechanical achievements, prehistoric peoples might have developed sophisticated understanding of how built environments could affect human psychology and cognition. They might have been creating spaces specifically designed to enhance learning, creativity, or spiritual experience. The implications for understanding ancient education and knowledge preservation are profound. If structures like Gunung Padang functioned as consciousness-enhancing environments, they might have served as prehistoric universities or research centers where knowledge was transmitted and developed through direct experiential methods rather than written records. This could explain why we find so little written evidence of advanced prehistoric knowledge while encountering increasing amounts of technological evidence. The knowledge might have been transmitted through experiential traditions that required specific environmental conditions to access and preserve. The global network of similar sites takes on new significance within this framework. Rather than isolated local developments, they might represent components of a worldwide system for preserving and transmitting knowledge through environmental and architectural means. Each site might have specialized in particular aspects of this knowledge system, connected through ancient trade and communication networks. The deliberate burial patterns found at many of these sites suggest systematic efforts to preserve knowledge for future recovery. Rather than abandonment or destruction, we might be seeing evidence of planned preservation by peoples who understood that catastrophic changes were coming and wanted to ensure that crucial knowledge would survive. This preservation hypothesis gains support from the remarkably consistent construction techniques found at sites separated by thousands of kilometers and apparently thousands of years. The precision stonework, the acoustic engineering, the electromagnetic properties all suggest shared knowledge systems that were maintained across vast distances and time periods. But who were these prehistoric engineers and knowledge keepers? The genetic evidence from ancient DNA is beginning to paint a picture of Ice Age populations that were far more sophisticated and mobile than previously thought. Rather than small, isolated hunter-gatherer bands, we're seeing evidence of large-scale migration networks, extensive trade systems, and complex social organizations. Recent DNA analysis has revealed that ancient peoples were remarkably well-traveled, with genetic markers showing connections between populations separated by continents. This genetic evidence provides a biological mechanism for the spread of technological knowledge and architectural techniques across the global network of anomalous sites. The preservation of this knowledge through catastrophic climate changes would have required extraordinary dedication and sophisticated understanding of how to encode information in durable physical forms. The builders of Gunung Padang and similar sites might have been the custodians of humanity's most crucial knowledge, tasked with ensuring its survival through periods of civilizational collapse. This custodial hypothesis explains many of the puzzling features we find at these sites. The massive investment of resources, the sophisticated engineering, the deliberate burial and preservation, all make sense if these were repositories of essential knowledge rather than simple monuments or settlements. The acoustic and electromagnetic properties take on new meaning as well. Rather than decorative features or coincidental effects, they might represent functional components of knowledge storage and retrieval systems that we're only beginning to understand. Sound and electromagnetic phenomena could have been used to encode and access information in ways that don't require written language or mechanical devices. Modern research into quantum consciousness and non-local information storage suggests that consciousness itself might be capable of accessing information through resonant phenomena. If ancient peoples understood these principles, they might have created structures that functioned as interfaces between human consciousness and encoded knowledge systems. This sounds speculative, but it's grounded in emerging scientific understanding of how consciousness interacts with environmental factors. The specific combinations of frequency, geometry, and electromagnetic properties found at sites like Gunung Padang are precisely those that modern research shows can induce expanded states of consciousness and enhanced cognitive function. The possibility that we're rediscovering ancient consciousness technologies has profound implications for understanding both prehistoric achievements and future human potential. If our ancestors possessed sophisticated understanding of consciousness enhancement and knowledge transmission, we might be on the verge of rediscovering capabilities that were lost during the catastrophic transitions that ended the Ice Age. The resistance to these ideas from mainstream academia becomes more understandable when we consider their implications. If prehistoric peoples possessed advanced knowledge systems that were destroyed by natural catastrophes, it suggests that our current civilization is also vulnerable to similar collapses. The comfortable narrative of steady progress from primitive to advanced becomes much more unsettling when viewed against the possibility of cyclical rise and fall. But these uncomfortable implications don't make the evidence any less compelling. The physical reality of sites like Gunung Padang, with their sophisticated engineering and anomalous properties, demands explanation regardless of how those explanations might challenge our assumptions about human history and civilizational development. As we continue investigating these mysteries, we're not just uncovering the past. We're potentially rediscovering knowledge and capabilities that could be crucial for navigating our own uncertain future. The builders of Gunung Padang faced catastrophic climate changes and civilizational collapse, yet somehow managed to preserve essential knowledge for future generations to rediscover. Their success in creating durable repositories of knowledge offers both inspiration and practical guidance for our own efforts to ensure continuity of human achievement in the face of environmental and social challenges. The more we understand about how they accomplish this preservation, the better equipped we'll be to face similar challenges in our own time. The story of Gunung Padang is far from complete, and new discoveries continue to emerge that deepen rather than resolve the mysteries surrounding this remarkable site. As technology advances and more evidence comes to light, we may eventually be able to reconstruct a more complete picture of the advanced civilizations that may have flourished during humanity's forgotten epochs. But even if we never fully understand the builders of Gunung Padang or the knowledge they were trying to preserve, their achievement in creating structures that continue to puzzle and inspire us tens of thousands of years later stands as testament to human ingenuity and the enduring power of knowledge carefully preserved for future generations to rediscover. As we delve deeper into this extraordinary puzzle, we need to examine what might be the most compelling evidence yet discovered at Gunung Padang. Because while the geological surveys and radiocarbon dates have sparked fierce academic debates, it's the physical artifacts themselves that tell the most intriguing story. These aren't theoretical constructs or interpretive frameworks. These are tangible objects you can hold in your hands. Objects that whisper of capabilities our textbooks insist didn't exist. Let's start with something that should be impossible. Coins that predate the invention of currency by millennia. During careful excavations of the upper terraces, researchers uncovered small metallic discs bearing faint but deliberate engravings. At first glance, they seemed unremarkable, perhaps colonial-era artifacts that had somehow worked their way into older soil layers. But detailed metallurgical analysis revealed something extraordinary. These weren't random pieces of metal. They showed clear evidence of standardized production, with consistent weights and dimensions that suggested systematic manufacturing processes. The alloy composition revealed sophisticated knowledge of copper smelting, combined with trace elements that required controlled heating and precise timing to achieve. When organic materials found in direct association with these coins were radiocarbon dated, the results sent shockwaves through the archaeological community, 5,200 years old. That places these Indonesian coins over 4 millennia before the earliest known currency was minted in ancient Lydia, around 600 BCE. If authentic, they represent evidence of complex economic systems and advanced metallurgy existing in Southeast Asia during periods when conventional archaeology tells us such innovations were impossible. The symbols etched into these coins add another layer of mystery. Rather than simple decorative patterns, they appear to be sophisticated, abstract motifs that bear striking resemblances to astronomical alignments. Some researchers have noted similarities to symbols found on Indus Valley seals, suggesting possible trade networks or shared cultural influences spanning vast distances during prehistoric times. But currency is just the beginning. The site has yielded an impressive collection of personal ornaments and jewelry that speaks to both artistic sophistication and extensive trade connections. Polished quartz and obsidian beads show evidence of advanced lapidary techniques with precisely cut facets designed to catch and manipulate light in specific ways. What makes these ornaments particularly intriguing is their raw materials. Trace element analysis of the obsidian reveals volcanic glass sourced from distant island chains, materials that would have required sophisticated navigation and trade networks to obtain. During the Ice Age, when sea levels were much lower, these trade routes would have connected Indonesia to mainland Southeast Asia across the exposed Sunderland continent. The ceramic evidence is equally puzzling. Pottery fragments show clear signs of wheel-thrown construction with glazing techniques that shouldn't appear in the archaeological record for centuries. These glazes required precise temperature control and understanding of mineral chemistry that implies formal knowledge systems and specialized training programs. Some pottery shards bear intricate etchings that mirror design motifs found at other controversial sites around the world. The geometric spirals and symbolic patterns suggest either remarkable convergent development or actual cultural connections spanning continents during prehistoric periods. The tools and weapons recovered paint a picture of technological capabilities that seem to leap centuries ahead of accepted timelines. Stone axes display incredibly sharp, polished edges that rival the finest Neolithic craftsmanship. Yet, they've been found in contexts suggesting much greater antiquity. The preservation of organic hafting materials reveals sophisticated understanding of tool assembly using resins and binding techniques. More controversial are the metallic traces embedded within some stone implements. Spectrographic analysis has detected iron particles deliberately incorporated into basalt tool matrices, suggesting experimentation with metallurgy thousands of years before iron working was supposedly developed in the region. These aren't random contaminations. The iron appears to be systematically integrated during the manufacturing process. Some weapons show wear patterns indicating both practical use and ceremonial significance. The exceptional symmetry and craftsmanship suggest these weren't just utilitarian objects, but items of considerable importance, possibly used in rituals or as symbols of authority within complex social hierarchies. Perhaps the most remarkable material discovery is the ancient cement compound that binds the massive stone blocks together. This isn't crude mortar or simple clay binding. Chemical analysis reveals a sophisticated geopolymer that represents materials, science capabilities that seem impossible for the proposed time periods. The cement consists of carefully controlled mixtures of clay, silica, and iron oxides, forming hydraulic binding agents capable of hardening underwater or in humid tropical conditions. When researchers attempted to replicate this compound in modern laboratories, they discovered that production required controlled firing at temperatures exceeding 800 degrees Celsius, along with precise timing and mixing procedures that suggest formal technical knowledge. The iron content appears intentionally added for structural reinforcement, much like rebar in modern concrete construction. But laboratory testing has revealed something even more intriguing. This ancient cement possesses subtle electrical conducting properties. When subjected to mechanical stress, it generates small electrical charges through piezoelectric effects, similar to modern quartz-based electronics. This electrical activity connects directly to the magnetic anomalies detected throughout Gunung Padang. Magnetometer surveys have identified patterns of magnetic variation suggesting metallic objects or aligned crystalline structures embedded within construction layers. The cement's conductive properties might have been designed to function as components of larger electromagnetic systems. If the builders understood piezoelectric effects and electromagnetic phenomena, they possessed knowledge that wouldn't be formally rediscovered by Western science until the 19th century. They might have been creating structures that functioned as primitive electrical systems for purposes we can only speculate about. The preservation conditions at Gunung Padang have provided researchers with an unusually complete picture of ancient technologies. Analysis of preserved plant fibers reveals sophisticated rope-making techniques using materials imported from considerable distances. Some fibers show evidence of treatment with natural preservatives and strengthening agents requiring detailed knowledge of plant chemistry. Even more intriguing are traces of what appear to be synthetic compounds created through deliberate chemical processes. These materials exist in microscopic quantities within the cement matrix and tool assemblages, but their molecular structures don't occur naturally. They seem to represent experimental chemistry pushing boundaries of what we thought possible for prehistoric peoples. The pattern emerging from all these material discoveries is one of systematic innovation and technological integration. Rather than isolated achievements by individual geniuses, we're seeing coordinated development across multiple disciplines, working together within sophisticated knowledge systems. What makes this evidence particularly challenging for conventional archaeology is its distribution within the site's controversial chronology. The most sophisticated materials and techniques aren't concentrated in the uppermost, most recent layers where technological advancement would be expected. Instead, they're found in deeper, older strata, suggesting capabilities may have declined over time rather than progressed linearly. This inverted technological progression contradicts fundamental assumptions about human development. Instead of steady improvement from simple to complex, Gunung Padang suggests periods of remarkable achievement followed by decline and knowledge loss. The implications extend far beyond this single site. If prehistoric peoples possess such sophisticated technological capabilities, what forces could cause such dramatic regression? Why don't we see continuous development from these early achievements to later civilizations? These questions become more pressing when considered within the global context of similar technological anomalies appearing at controversial sites worldwide, all dating to roughly the same prehistoric periods. Rather than isolated local developments, they might represent fragments of much more extensive technological traditions, largely lost to history. The material evidence doesn't just challenge specific dates or construction techniques. It forces reconsideration of fundamental assumptions about human capability, technological development, and the forces shaping civilizational rise and fall. But understanding what this evidence means requires looking beyond individual artifacts to examine the broader patterns of how advanced knowledge might have been preserved, transmitted, and ultimately lost during the catastrophic transitions that marked the end of the Ice Age. Because the story these materials tell isn't just about sophisticated prehistoric technology, it's about the fragility of knowledge itself and the extraordinary measures our ancestors may have taken to ensure its survival. The acoustic properties we discussed earlier take on new significance when viewed alongside this material evidence. The precisely tuned resonant frequencies, the electromagnetic anomalies, the sophisticated cement compounds, all suggest that Gunung Padang might have functioned as something far more complex than a simple monument or settlement. Recent research into consciousness and environmental psychology has revealed that specific combinations of sound frequencies, electromagnetic fields, and architectural geometry can produce profound effects on human awareness and cognitive function. The particular frequencies detected at Gunung Padang align remarkably well with brainwave patterns associated with enhanced learning, creative insight, and expanded states of consciousness. Could ancient builders have understood these principles and deliberately designed structures to induce specific mental states? The evidence increasingly suggests they possessed exactly this kind of knowledge. Sites around the world show similar acoustic and electromagnetic properties, often combined with architectural features that seem designed to enhance psychological experiences. This raises profound questions about the relationship between ancient technology and human consciousness. Rather than focusing purely on mechanical achievements, prehistoric peoples might have developed sophisticated understanding of how built environments could affect human psychology and cognition. They might have been creating spaces specifically designed to enhance learning, creativity, or spiritual experience. If structures like Gunung Padang functioned as consciousness-enhancing environments, they might have served as prehistoric centers of learning, where knowledge was transmitted through direct experiential methods rather than written records. This could explain why we find increasing amounts of technological evidence while discovering so little written documentation of advanced prehistoric knowledge. The global network of similar sites takes on new meaning within this framework. Rather than isolated local developments, they might represent components of a worldwide system for preserving and transmitting knowledge through environmental and architectural means. Each site might have specialized in particular aspects of this knowledge system, connected through ancient communication networks. The deliberate burial patterns found at many of these sites suggest systematic efforts to preserve knowledge for future recovery. Rather than abandonment or destruction, we might be seeing evidence of planned preservation by peoples who understood that catastrophic changes were approaching and wanted to ensure crucial knowledge would survive. This preservation hypothesis gains support from the remarkably consistent construction techniques found at sites separated by thousands of kilometers and apparently thousands of years. The precision stonework, the acoustic engineering, the electromagnetic properties all suggest shared knowledge systems maintained across vast distances and time periods. But who were these prehistoric engineers and knowledge keepers? Recent advances in ancient DNA analysis are beginning to paint a picture of Ice Age populations that were far more sophisticated and mobile than previously imagined. Rather than small, isolated hunter-gatherer bands, we're seeing evidence of large-scale migration networks, extensive trade systems, and complex social organizations. Genetic evidence reveals that ancient peoples were remarkably well-traveled, with DNA markers showing connections between populations separated by continents. This genetic data provides biological mechanisms for the spread of technological knowledge and architectural techniques across the global network of anomalous sites. The preservation of knowledge through catastrophic climate changes would have required extraordinary dedication and sophisticated understanding of how to encode information in durable physical forms. The builders of Gunung Padang and similar sites might have been custodians of humanity's most crucial knowledge, tasked with ensuring its survival through periods of civilizational collapse. This custodial hypothesis explains many puzzling features we find at these sites. The massive resource investment, the sophisticated engineering, the deliberate burial and preservation, all make sense if these were repositories of essential knowledge, rather than simple monuments or settlements. The acoustic and electromagnetic properties take on new meaning as functional components of knowledge storage and retrieval systems, rather than decorative features or coincidental effects. Sound and electromagnetic phenomena could have been used to encode and access information in ways that don't require written language or mechanical devices. Modern research into quantum consciousness and non-local information storage suggests that consciousness itself might be capable of accessing information through resonant phenomena. If ancient peoples understood these principles, they might have created structures functioning as interfaces between human consciousness and encoded knowledge systems. The possibility that we're rediscovering ancient consciousness technologies has profound implications for understanding both prehistoric achievements and future human potential. If our ancestors possessed sophisticated understanding of consciousness enhancement and knowledge transmission, we might be on the verge of rediscovering capabilities lost during the catastrophic transitions ending the Ice Age. As we continue investigating these mysteries, we're not just uncovering the past. We're potentially rediscovering knowledge and capabilities that could prove crucial for navigating our own uncertain future. The builders of Gunung Padang faced catastrophic climate changes and civilizational collapse, yet somehow managed to preserve essential knowledge for future generations to rediscover. Their success in creating durable repositories of knowledge offers both inspiration and practical guidance for our own efforts to ensure continuity of human achievement in the face of environmental and social challenges. The more we understand about how they accomplish this preservation, the better equipped we'll be to face similar challenges in our own time. But as we'll explore next, the academic establishment's response to these discoveries reveals as much about the politics of knowledge in our modern world as it does about ancient civilizations. Because sometimes, the reaction to new evidence tells us more about the current state of human understanding than the evidence itself reveals about the past. The resistance from mainstream archaeology has been swift and, frankly, more revealing than the discoveries themselves. Because when you watch how an academic establishment responds to evidence that challenges its core assumptions, you learn as much about the politics of knowledge as you do about ancient history. The retraction of Dr. Hillman's paper in March 2024 wasn't just an academic disagreement. It was a declaration of war against ideas that don't fit comfortably within established frameworks. The journal's editors didn't simply question methodology or suggest alternative interpretations. They essentially accused the research team of fundamental incompetence, claiming major errors in associating radiocarbon dates with human activity. But here's what makes this retraction particularly suspicious to anyone paying attention. It focused almost exclusively on the dating evidence while completely ignoring the geophysical surveys that had originally convinced peer reviewers to publish the paper. The underground chambers revealed by ground-penetrating radar, the geometric anomalies detected through seismic imaging, the clear evidence of artificial construction patterns, all of this remained completely unexplained by the retraction. Dr. Hillman and his colleagues didn't take this lying down. In public statements and interviews, they argued that the retraction was premature and ignored crucial supplementary evidence that had been submitted during the revision process. They pointed out something that should concern anyone interested in scientific integrity. Most of their critics hadn't actually visited the site, hadn't examined the raw data, and were making judgments based on second-hand interpretations rather than direct analysis. The timing raised additional red flags. The retraction came just as Gunung Padang was gaining international attention through documentaries and popular media coverage that featured the site as potential evidence for advanced prehistoric civilizations. It's hard not to wonder if mainstream archaeology was trying to distance itself from anything that might be associated with alternative historical theories, regardless of the actual scientific merit involved. What's particularly telling is the pattern of response from establishment archaeologists. Rather than engaging with the specific evidence presented, many resorted to character attacks and blanket dismissals. Terms like pseudo-archaeology and fringe theory got thrown around liberally, often by researchers who admitted they hadn't examined the primary data themselves. This kind of intellectual gatekeeping isn't unusual in academic fields, but it becomes deeply problematic when it prevents serious consideration of evidence that challenges existing paradigms. The history of science is absolutely littered with revolutionary discoveries that were initially rejected by established authorities. Continental drift theory, the bacterial causes of ulcers, the impact origin of major extinction events, all of these were dismissed by mainstream science before eventually being accepted. The Gunung Padang controversy seems to follow an eerily similar pattern. Establishment archaeologists have invested entire careers in constructing narratives about human development that place sophisticated civilization firmly within the last few thousand years. Evidence suggesting advanced engineering capabilities during the Ice Age threatens to overturn decades' worth of scholarship, funding streams, and professional reputations. There's also a geopolitical dimension that can't be ignored. For centuries, the story of human civilization has been dominated by European and Middle Eastern sites. The pyramids of Egypt, the temples of Greece, the monuments of Rome. These have been held up as the pinnacles of ancient achievement. The idea that some of humanity's earliest and most sophisticated accomplishments might have occurred in Southeast Asia challenges Western-centric historical narratives that have shaped everything from museum collections to university curricula. Indonesia's government clearly recognizes the potential significance of Gunung Padang, not just scientifically, but culturally and economically. Culture Minister Fadli Zon's public statements urging renewed investigations frame the site as a national treasure deserving clarity amid ongoing debates. The official announcements of staged restoration projects represent significant governmental investment in resolving these controversies. This governmental support provides resources and legitimacy that independent researchers often lack, but it also adds political complexity to what should be purely scientific questions. When archaeological discoveries become matters of national pride and economic development, the pressure to find spectacular results can sometimes compromise objective analysis. The Indonesian approach appears more measured than some past archaeological controversies. Rather than rushing to excavate or making grandiose claims without proper evidence, they're planning careful, methodical investigation using the most advanced techniques available. This includes potential international collaborations that could bring additional expertise and credibility to the research. But the academic establishment's resistance continues unabated. Critics demand what they call extraordinary evidence for extraordinary claims, which sounds reasonable until you realize how this standard gets applied selectively. The same archaeological community that accepts relatively modest evidence for conventional sites suddenly requires overwhelming proof when confronted with anything that challenges established timelines. The social media response has been equally revealing. Online discussions about Gunung Padang have exploded across platforms, with amateur researchers dissecting retraction notices and spotting inconsistencies in official responses. Forums buzz with discussions about academic gatekeeping and suppressed evidence, sometimes veering into conspiracy territory, but often raising legitimate questions about scientific integrity. What's emerged is essentially a parallel conversation happening outside traditional academic channels, where researchers and enthusiasts share data, debate interpretations, and pursue lines of inquiry that established institutions seem reluctant to explore. This democratization of archaeological discussion has both benefits and dangers, allowing fresh perspectives, while sometimes amplifying unfounded speculation. The retraction itself has become a fascinating case study in how academic institutions handle controversial research. Rather than encouraging further investigation to resolve uncertainties, the response seems designed to shut down inquiry entirely. This approach might protect established narratives in the short term, but it risks seriously damaging the credibility of archaeology as a scientific discipline. Independent analysis of the retracted paper reveals that many of the criticisms focus on interpretive frameworks rather than fundamental methodological flaws. The radiocarbon dates are accurate, the geophysical surveys were conducted properly, and the site clearly contains artificial structures. The real dispute centers on how to interpret this evidence within existing theoretical frameworks. This highlights a crucial distinction that often gets lost in academic debates: the difference between evidence and interpretation. The physical reality of Gunung Padang, its layered construction, its underground chambers, its sophisticated materials, these facts remain constant regardless of how we choose to interpret them. The academic battle isn't really about what exists at the site, it's about what we're allowed to conclude from what exists. The suppression narrative gains credibility when we consider the broader context of archaeological discovery over the past few decades. Time and again, evidence that challenges established chronologies has faced institutional resistance. The underwater ruins off Japan's coast, the sophisticated stonework at sites in Turkey, the mysterious alignments found at locations around the world, all have faced similar skepticism from mainstream archaeology. What makes Gunung Padang different is the sheer quality and quantity of scientific evidence supporting anomalous conclusions. This isn't based on speculation or wishful thinking. It's grounded in rigorous geophysical analysis, careful stratigraphic study, and multiple independent dating techniques. The evidence is strong enough that dismissing it requires increasingly elaborate explanations for why everything appears to be something it's not. The controversy has also revealed interesting fault lines within the archaeological community itself. Younger researchers, particularly those trained in advanced scientific techniques rather than traditional humanistic approaches, seem more open to considering evidence that challenges established narratives. Meanwhile, senior academics who've built careers on specific interpretations of the past show greater resistance to paradigm-shifting discoveries. This generational divide reflects broader changes in how archaeology gets practiced. Modern techniques like advanced ground-penetrating radar, genetic analysis, and sophisticated dating methods are revealing aspects of the past that weren't accessible to earlier generations of researchers. As these technologies become more powerful and widely available, they're likely to generate even more discoveries that don't fit comfortably within existing frameworks. The international dimension adds yet another layer of complexity. While Indonesian researchers push forward with new investigations, many Western archaeologists remain skeptical or openly dismissive. This creates an awkward situation where different national academic communities reach completely different conclusions about the same evidence, undermining the supposed universality of scientific method. Perhaps most troubling is how the controversy has exposed the role of funding and institutional pressure in shaping archaeological narratives. Researchers depend on grants, publications, and professional recognition to advance their careers. Taking positions that challenge established orthodoxy can be professionally dangerous, creating powerful incentives to conform rather than pursue evidence wherever it might lead. The retraction of the Gunung Padang paper sends a clear message to other researchers. Challenge established chronologies at your own risk. This chilling effect might prevent legitimate scientific inquiry into sites and discoveries that don't fit conventional narratives, ultimately impoverishing our understanding of the human past. Yet the story continues evolving, despite academic pushback. Public interest in Gunung Padang remains extraordinarily high, driven partly by social media attention and documentary coverage. This popular enthusiasm creates ongoing pressure for continued investigation, even when establishment archaeology remains reluctant to engage. Recent developments suggest the momentum is building rather than fading. New technological approaches are being planned, international collaborations are forming, and governmental support appears to be strengthening. The site's potential connections to other anomalous locations around the world add another dimension to the controversy, suggesting patterns that transcend individual discoveries. As restoration work begins and new investigations get underway, we're likely to see this academic battle intensify rather than resolve. The stakes are simply too high for either side to back down. If Gunung Padang proves to be what its supporters claim, it will force a complete reassessment of human prehistoric capabilities. If it turns out to be a more conventional site, it will serve as a cautionary tale about the dangers of over-interpreting limited evidence. But regardless of how this particular controversy resolves, it's already revealed important truths about how knowledge gets constructed, protected, and sometimes suppressed in our modern academic system. The lessons extend far beyond archaeology into questions about scientific integrity, institutional power, and the forces that shape our understanding of truth itself. What makes this especially relevant for those of us interested in forgotten history is how it demonstrates that the past isn't fixed. Our understanding of what happened thousands of years ago continues evolving as new evidence emerges and new techniques become available. The story of human civilization is still being written, and the next chapter might be more surprising than anything we've discovered so far. The academic establishment's fierce resistance to paradigm-shifting evidence reminds us that challenging accepted wisdom has never been easy, whether we're talking about ancient history or contemporary science. But it also shows us that truth has a way of persisting despite institutional obstacles. The physical evidence at Gunung Padang isn't going anywhere, and neither are the questions it raises about our understanding of the human past. As we continue exploring these mysteries, it becomes clear that we're not just investigating ancient civilizations. We're participating in an ongoing struggle between different ways of understanding knowledge, evidence, and truth itself. The outcome of that struggle will determine not just what we know about the past, but how we approach the unknown in our own uncertain future. The implications of what we're discovering at Gunung Padang extend into some of the most fundamental questions about the nature of human civilization and our place in the grand sweep of history. Because if this site represents what the mounting evidence suggests, we're potentially looking at fragments of entire civilizations that flourished and vanished during periods we've always assumed were populated only by simple hunter-gatherer societies. Consider for a moment what it would actually mean if sophisticated civilizations existed during the Ice Age. We're talking about a time when massive ice sheets covered much of the northern hemisphere, when global sea levels were over 120 meters lower than today, when the very geography of our planet was completely different from anything we know now. The exposed continental shelves created land masses on a scale that would be impossible in our current world. The Sundaland continent, which connected present-day Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and parts of Southeast Asia into a single enormous landmass, would have been roughly equivalent to the size of modern Europe. This vast area, now mostly submerged beneath the South China Sea and Java Sea, could have supported populations and civilizations on a scale we can barely comprehend today. Gunung Padang, positioned in what would have been the mountainous interior of this ancient continent, represents the perfect location for a major ceremonial, administrative, or technological center. Its elevated position would have made it visible across vast distances, while its inland location would have provided protection from the coastal flooding that accompanied the end of the Ice Age. Think about the implications of that geographic reality. During the height of the last glacial period, what we now perceive as scattered islands separated by deep ocean waters were actually highlands rising from extensive continental plains. Rivers would have flowed for thousands of kilometers across regions that are now deep underwater. Forests, grasslands, and human settlements would have stretched across areas that today exist only on the ocean floor. The potential for large, complex societies in such an environment would have been extraordinary. We're not talking about small bands of nomadic hunters struggling for survival. We're potentially looking at the geographic foundation for civilizations that could have rivaled or exceeded anything that developed in later historical periods. But then, approximately 12,000 years ago, everything changed. The Ice Age didn't end gradually over millennia. It concluded in a series of catastrophic pulses that raised global sea levels by over 100 meters in relatively short geological periods. Entire continents disappeared beneath rising waters. Any coastal civilizations would have been completely obliterated, their populations scattered, eliminated, or forced to retreat to higher ground. This catastrophic scenario provides a compelling framework for understanding why evidence of advanced prehistoric civilizations remains so fragmentary and controversial. The vast majority of traces would have been submerged beneath hundreds of feet of water, buried under marine sediments, or destroyed by the massive environmental upheavals that accompanied deglaciation. Only sites in protected inland locations, deliberately preserved through burial, or accidentally sealed by geological processes, would have survived to puzzle modern researchers. The pattern we observe at Gunung Padang, with its multiple construction phases and intentional burial layers, makes perfect sense within this catastrophic preservation framework. Rather than representing continuous occupation by a single culture, we might be seeing evidence of periodic reoccupation by survivors, attempting to preserve and maintain ancient knowledge in the face of ongoing environmental collapse. Each construction phase could represent a different group's effort to rebuild, preserve, or reactivate technologies and knowledge systems that were being lost to changing circumstances. This connects to one of the most intriguing aspects of Gunung Padang: its apparent function as some kind of technological or consciousness enhancement facility rather than a simple settlement or defensive structure. The sophisticated acoustic properties, the electromagnetic anomalies, the advanced material technologies, all suggest purposes that transcend basic habitation or protection. Recent research into the relationship between environmental factors and human consciousness has revealed that specific combinations of sound frequencies, electromagnetic fields, and architectural geometry can produce profound effects on awareness, cognitive function, and psychological states. The particular frequencies and electromagnetic signatures detected at Gunung Padang align remarkably well with patterns that modern neuroscience associates with enhanced learning, creative insight, and expanded states of consciousness. Could ancient builders have possessed sophisticated understanding of these principles and deliberately designed structures to induce specific mental states? The evidence increasingly suggests they had exactly this kind of knowledge. Similar acoustic and electromagnetic properties appear at controversial sites around the world, often combined with architectural features that seem purpose-built to enhance psychological and spiritual experiences. This raises profound questions about the relationship between ancient technology and human consciousness development. Rather than focusing exclusively on mechanical achievements like moving massive stones or creating precise cuts, prehistoric peoples might have developed advanced understanding of how built environments could affect human psychology, learning capacity, and spiritual awareness. If structures like Gunung Padang functioned as consciousness enhancement environments, they might have served as prehistoric centers of learning and knowledge preservation, where crucial information was transmitted through direct experiential methods rather than written documentation. This could explain why we find increasing amounts of sophisticated technological evidence while discovering so little written record of advanced prehistoric knowledge. The knowledge transmission might have required specific environmental conditions to access and preserve effectively. Rather than storing information in books or databases, ancient peoples might have encoded knowledge in architectural and environmental systems that could only be accessed through particular states of consciousness, induced by the structures themselves. The global network of similar sites takes on entirely new significance within this framework. Rather than representing isolated local developments that happen to share certain characteristics, they might have been components of a worldwide knowledge preservation and transmission system. Each site might have specialized in particular aspects of this system, connected through ancient communication and trade networks that spanned continents. The deliberate burial patterns found at many of these sites suggest systematic efforts to preserve crucial knowledge for future recovery during times when surface occupation became impossible or dangerous. Rather than representing abandonment or destruction, we might be witnessing evidence of carefully planned preservation by peoples who understood that catastrophic environmental changes were approaching. This preservation hypothesis gained substantial support from the remarkably consistent construction techniques, acoustic properties, and electromagnetic characteristics found at sites separated by thousands of kilometers and apparently thousands of years. The precision stonework, the acoustic engineering, the electromagnetic anomalies all suggest shared knowledge systems that were maintained across vast distances and extended time periods. But who were these prehistoric engineers and knowledge keepers? Recent advances in ancient DNA analysis are beginning to paint a picture of Ice Age populations that were far more sophisticated, mobile, and interconnected than previous archaeological models suggested. Rather than small, isolated bands of hunter-gatherers barely surviving in harsh environments, we're seeing evidence of extensive migration networks, complex trade systems, and sophisticated social organizations. Genetic evidence reveals that ancient peoples were remarkably well-traveled, with DNA markers showing connections between populations separated by entire continents. This genetic data provides biological mechanisms for the spread of technological knowledge, architectural techniques, and consciousness enhancement practices across the global network of anomalous sites. The preservation of advanced knowledge through catastrophic climate changes and civilizational collapses would have required extraordinary dedication and sophisticated understanding of how to encode crucial information in durable physical forms. The builders of Gunung Padang and similar sites might have served as custodians of humanity's most essential knowledge, tasked with ensuring its survival through periods when normal social structures and transmission methods were breaking down. This custodial hypothesis explains many of the puzzling features we encounter at these sites. The massive investment of resources, the sophisticated engineering, the deliberate burial and preservation protocols all make sense if these were repositories of essential knowledge rather than simple monuments, settlements, or defensive installations. The acoustic and electromagnetic properties take on new meaning as functional components of knowledge storage and retrieval systems, rather than decorative features or coincidental effects. Sound waves and electromagnetic phenomena could have been used to encode and access information in ways that didn't require written language, mechanical devices, or other technologies vulnerable to destruction during catastrophic periods. Modern research into quantum consciousness, morphic resonance, and non-local information storage suggests that consciousness itself might be capable of accessing information through resonant phenomena that transcend normal space-time limitations. If ancient peoples understood these principles, they might have created structures that functioned as interfaces between human consciousness and encoded knowledge systems. The possibility that we're in the process of rediscovering ancient consciousness technologies has profound implications for understanding both prehistoric achievements and future human potential. If our Ice Age ancestors possessed sophisticated understanding of consciousness enhancement, knowledge preservation, and information transmission through environmental means, we might be on the verge of recovering capabilities that were lost during the catastrophic transitions that ended the last glacial period. Their success in creating durable repositories of essential knowledge offers both inspiration and practical guidance for our own efforts to ensure continuity of human achievement in the face of environmental challenges, social upheavals, and technological disruptions. The more we understand about how they accomplished this remarkable feat of preservation, the better equipped we'll be to navigate similar challenges in our own increasingly uncertain times. The builders of Gunung Padang faced catastrophic climate changes, rising sea levels, and the collapse of entire continental landmasses, yet somehow managed to preserve crucial knowledge in forms that could survive tens of thousands of years and still function when rediscovered. Their achievement represents one of the most successful long-term preservation projects in human history, and we're only beginning to understand how they accomplished it. As we reach the end of our journey through the mysteries of Gunung Padang, we find ourselves confronting questions that extend far beyond a single hill in Indonesia. Because what this site potentially represents isn't just another archaeological puzzle to be solved and filed away. It's a mirror that reflects our own assumptions about human capability, technological development, and the forces that shape civilizational rise and fall. The evidence we've examined tonight paints a picture that challenges some of our most fundamental beliefs about the past. The sophisticated acoustic engineering, the advanced materials science, the precision stonework that rivals modern capabilities, all potentially dating back to the height of the last ice age. If even half of what the research suggests is accurate, we're looking at evidence of human achievement that doesn't fit comfortably within any existing historical framework. But perhaps that's exactly the point. Perhaps our frameworks have been too narrow, too constrained by the assumption that progress moves in straight lines from simple to complex. The story of Gunung Padang suggests something far more unsettling and far more interesting, that human history might be cyclical rather than linear, marked by periods of extraordinary achievement followed by collapse and forgetting. This cyclical view of history has profound implications for how we understand our own moment in time. We live in an age of unprecedented technological capability, global communication, and accumulated knowledge. We tend to assume that this represents the peak of human achievement, that we've finally transcended the limitations that constrained our ancestors. But the builders of Gunung Padang, if the evidence is correct, might have thought exactly the same thing. The acoustic properties we've discussed, the electromagnetic anomalies, the sophisticated cement compounds, all suggest that our Ice Age predecessors might have understood aspects of physics and consciousness that we're only beginning to rediscover. They might have possessed knowledge of how sound, structure, and human awareness interact in ways that our modern science is just starting to explore. This doesn't diminish our own achievements. If anything, it suggests that human ingenuity and capability have deeper roots than we ever imagined. It implies that the drive to understand, to build, to preserve knowledge for future generations is one of our species' most enduring characteristics, expressing itself across vast spans of time in ways we're still learning to recognize. The academic controversy surrounding these discoveries also tells us something important about how knowledge evolves in our own time. The fierce resistance to paradigm-shifting evidence, the institutional pressures that shape what can and cannot be discussed, the role of funding and professional reputation in determining which ideas get pursued, all of this reveals that even in our supposedly objective scientific age, the politics of knowledge remain as complex as ever. Perhaps most importantly, Gunung Padang reminds us that the past isn't settled. New discoveries continue to emerge. New technologies allow us to see things that were previously invisible, and our understanding of human history continues to evolve. The story we tell ourselves about where we came from and how we got here remains very much a work in progress. As restoration work continues at the site and new investigations get underway, we may soon have answers to some of the questions we've explored tonight. Or we may discover that the mysteries run even deeper than we currently imagine. Either way, the conversation about what it means to be human, what we're capable of achieving, and how we preserve knowledge across the centuries will continue. The builders of Gunung Padang, whoever they were and whenever they lived, succeeded in creating something that still speaks to us across vast spans of time. Whether they were preserving knowledge from an earlier catastrophe, developing new understanding through experimentation, or simply expressing the same human drive to create meaning through construction that we see throughout history, their achievement stands as testament to the enduring power of human ingenuity. In the end, perhaps that's the most important lesson Gunung Padang has to offer. Not specific answers about dates or techniques or lost civilizations, but the reminder that human beings have always been more capable, more creative, and more resilient than the limitations of any particular moment might suggest. The same drive that led Ice Age builders to create sophisticated acoustic chambers and preserve knowledge in stone continues to motivate researchers today, who risk their careers to pursue evidence wherever it leads. The mystery of Gunung Padang isn't just about the past. It's about the future we're creating right now through our choices about what to investigate, what to preserve, and what stories we tell about human possibility. In that sense, we're not so different from those ancient builders who looked out at an uncertain world and decided to create something that would endure. Whether Gunung Padang ultimately proves to be evidence of advanced Ice Age engineering or a more conventional structure enhanced by later peoples, it has already succeeded in its most important function, making us question our assumptions and expand our vision of what human beings are capable of achieving. And that might be the greatest legacy any civilization can leave behind, the gift of wonder and the invitation to keep looking, keep questioning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what we think we know about ourselves and our place in the vast story of human history. Thanks for joining me on this journey into one of archaeology's most controversial mysteries. I'm the History Guy, and this has been Before Law, where we dig into the stories that challenge everything we thought we knew about our past. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember that the most important discoveries often lie just beyond the edges of what we're comfortable believing.